Here you have the 2013, this is Junior Cert Higher Level, and this is a question on probability. This question says the arrow represents the different routes that a skier can take when skiing down a mountain. The circles on the diagram represent different points on the routes. When leaving any particular point on the mountain, a skier is equally likely to choose any of the available routes from that point. Fill in the boxes in the diagram which represent the probability that the skier will take that route. So if he's equally likely, that means there's an equal chance of him taking either route when he's at a certain point. So when he's at A, he's equally likely to take this route as he is to take this route. So the probability that he takes either of those routes will be a half. When he's at B, he's equally likely to take this route or that route. So the probability that he takes either of those routes will also be a half. When he's at C, the probability that he takes this route or this route is equally likely, so they'll both be a half. But when he's at D, there are 3 available routes, and the probability that he takes each route is equally likely, so the probability of each will have to be a third. And we're going with probability goes on a scale from 0 to 1. So if a skier starts at point A, how many different ways can he reach point E? Well, he could go from A, B, E, so that's one way, A, B, E. He could go A, B, D, E, so that's another way, A, B, D, E. Or he could go A, C, D, E, A, C, D, E. He couldn't go A, C, G, D, E because that arrow is only going that way, we can go back up way. So if we were asked to fill in the amount of ways that he can get to E, it's going to be 3 ways. So if the skier starts at point A, find the probability that the skier will reach point E. So we have 3 different ways. So we want to get the probability that he goes on way 1, which is A, B, E, or the probability that he goes way 2, which is A, B, D, E, or the probability that he goes on way 3, which is A, C, D, E. In probability, if we can do one thing or another thing, we add the probabilities. But for each of these probabilities, it's going to be A, B, E. So we're going to have, he's going, for the first one, he's going A, then he's going B, and he's going E. So we're going to multiply the probability. So the probability that he goes from A to B is a half. The probability that he goes from B to E is a half. So the probability that he takes this route will be a half multiplied by a half, which will be a quarter. The probability that he goes A, B, D, E will be the probability that he goes A to B, which is a half first, and then the probability that he goes from B to D, which will be a half, and then the probability that he then goes from A to B is a half, and then from B to D is a half, and then from D to E, which will be a third. So then it will be a half by a half, which is a quarter, and then by a third, which will be 1/12. And then that he goes A, C, D, E. So the probability that he goes from A to C is a half, and then he's going from C to D, so and we multiply, so is a half, and then he goes from D to E, so that's a quarter. So a half by a quarter, so then we'll get again 1/12. So if we're doing this way or that way or that way, we have to add the probability. So a quarter or a half, so or means we add, and then plus a half. So this all together will give the probability that he arrives at point E. So a quarter plus 1/12 plus 1/12, and then I get 5/12. So that is the probability that the skier will reach point E.